Hi everyone, it's Aga from EurekaCrystalBeads.com and I'm here with another fun beading tutorial for you. Before I get started, just a quick reminder to check out the rest of our channel, and if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you always know when we're posting new content. So today I'm going to show you how to make this lovely bridal necklace, which I really love for this colorway in particular because it kind of merges and combines different finishes, like these ginkgos are pearly finish as well as these round check pearls, and then you have this pure white in these Magatama beads, and then you have the crystal and crystal AB, which shines and shimmers so much, and I really love it. So it's delicate because it has a little bit of a lace pattern, I would say, with the Magatamas, and it also has a lot of shine, so it's also a statement piece, I would say, and it's really lovely. It's not so big, but it's intricate enough for a big event, and if you're not getting married anytime soon, you can also make it in this colorway, and all of the materials will be available under the link in the description for this one as well. So if you want to make something a little bit darker, or a lot darker really, then go ahead and try in a different colorway. But today we're going to focus on this white, beautiful bridal version. So let me tell you a little bit about the supplies that you're going to need to make the necklace. Let's start with the crystal that's going to be in the middle of this pendant here. And this is a 14mm Rivoli. And you can use any color you like. Here I have crystal, and it's of course Elite Eureka crystal. Top quality, as you can see, the edge is very thin. Next, when it comes to crystal, here I don't have any, but you can use a drop. And this is a 13 per 6.5mm, and it's crystal AB. And you're actually going to need one of these, but if you're using the same clasp as me, which is going to be this one from our Gleam Craft Classic Essence series, it has a second loop in here that you can use to attach a pendant, so I'm going to actually do that with the second one. Next, we have our ginkgos, and you're going to need exactly 21 of those if you're going to be making the same length as me, or more, because you might want to make it longer or shorter, so more or less 21 of ginkgo beads. Then we have the star of the show, I think, the TOHO Magatama, and I haven't counted, but one tube of those will be fine. Then we have the 6mm pearls. I chose check glass pearls. You can choose any pearls you like, of course, and of these you're going to need 18 for the length that I'm going to be making, or more or fewer if you're going to want to make the necklace shorter. Then we have the bicones. Here I have this absolutely stunning crystal AB2X, and this is of course Elite Eureka crystal, and these are 4mm, and you're going to need 37 for my length, or more or fewer. Then when it comes to seed beads, here I have 11 O's, here I have 15 O's, and the color that I'm going to be using, which is Crystal Snowline, is actually discontinued at this moment, so if you want the same result, run and buy out our stock, because we still have some in stock, but when they're no longer available, you can of course use a different color, and that will look equally nice, I think. Here I have TOHO treasure beads. You can also use the Likas. And that's it when it comes to the beads. When it comes to tools and other supplies, you're going to need a clasp for your necklace, of course. And I'm still wondering actually if I'm going to be using this heart or this heart. They're both white gold covered, and they don't really have a gold color. As you can see, it's more like an absolutely lovely silver shade. And it's a nice warm silver, I would say, and it matches very well with the crystal colors, so I really like it. And I don't know yet if I'm going to be using the magnetic clasp or the toggle clasp, with the rhinestones. But in any case, you're going to need some jump rings for that. Any jump rings will do, except if you want to hang crystal drop over here, you're going to need a jump ring that is thin enough to fit in the hole, which I would say is 21 gauge. Maybe will do, but a 22, 3, 4 gauge will be a safer bet. And you're gonna need a jump ring that is 5mm or larger. Then the last things that you're going to need are a needle, and here I have a brand new fresh size 12 needle, and Fireline 4LB in the color crystal. And for this one I used 6LB black Fireline, and it turned out great. You can also use Nymo thread or 1G, and that will turn out really fine as well. But with Fireline, of course, you have a little bit more control over where the beads are going, and it's all not so supple and flowy. And I believe these are all the supplies, so let's get started. Alright, so the first thing you're gonna do is take about a wingspan of thread. I'm not cutting it off just yet, and I'll start with a stopper bead. So this is a different color bead that I will put on the thread. You can take less than a wingspan of thread. So if you spread out your arms, this is a wingspan. And this is quite a lot of thread. So if you want to use less of the thread, you can very well do this. And you can always use the tail, because if you don't cut it off from the spool, if something goes wrong or if you run out of thread, you don't have to attach new thread and go through the entire knotting and weaving in process again. You can just use the tail thread from where you started. I'm going to try and use an entire wingspan. And one more note. We're going to be starting with Ginkgo beads, and I might have their holes already checked, but as you go, please check the holes. It will be a shame if you had to go back and do things over again because one of the holes turns out blocked. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start from the outer part of the Ginkgo bead. So I'm going in from this rounded part over here. I'm gonna go all the way to the stopper bead, and I'm going to add 1 11/0 in here, and I'm going to put on another Ginkgo, this time from the other side. So this is the way that they are connected now, and I'm coming out of this outer hole of the other Ginkgo that I added. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect their holes from the other side over here. And I'm going to do that by putting 1 11/0 and then a 4mm bicone and another 11/0. So this is the sequence that I'm putting over here, connecting the hole from the other side, like this. Make sure that your stopper beads always ends up in the front. So right now I'm exiting this inner hole, this inner side of the hole of the Ginkgo right here. And what I want to do is I want to go through the 11/0 and the other Ginkgo again, just like this, so that I'm coming out of that hole in the second Ginkgo bead, just like this. And what I'm gonna do now is I'll add 1 11/0, 1 Magatama bead, and 1 11/0. So we have something like this. Now, as you can see, I'm in the same position as I was when I first went through that first Ginkgo bead. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add an 11/0 and another Ginkgo going through this from this narrow end, like that. And right away, what I can do is grab an 11/0, a bicone, and another 11/0, and go right through that previous Ginkgo bead. So adding the next Ginkgo, we're basically making a circle like that. Now I'm gonna go through that 11/0 and the Ginkgo so that I end up outside of that circle that I'm making, just like this. Now again, I'm going to be adding an 11/0, a Magatama bead, and an 11/0, and then I'm gonna go up this other hole here and add an 11-0 and another Ginkgo, and so on and so forth. So basically what I'm doing is I'm going like this, then a circle like here, down a Ginkgo, to the other hole of the Ginkgo, and so on and so forth, until I have 5 Ginkgos and I can connect them into a circle. There I added my 5th one. Now I want to connect it to that first one, so I'm just adding an 11-0 between them. And I'm gonna make this one last circle and add the last elements that are missing, which is the bicone and the Magatama bead, because this Ginkgo still doesn't have one. I'm just gonna make sure that the stopper bead is in the front. At this point, if you want to cut off your thread from your spool, then just take some inches, enough to weave it in, and trim it off. I'm not gonna do that unless it really annoys me. Right now, we're coming out of this inner hole of this Ginkgo, the first one that we added basically. And what we want is we want to be coming out of one of the bicones in here. So I'm going down this Ginkgo. And as if I was adding this 11-0 bicone 11-0, I'm just going through the bicone. And now we're actually going to be adding the back. So I turn the work over. I'm coming out of this bicone here, and I'm going to add 5 11-0s and go through the next bicone. Make sure that your 11-0s end up on the back, just like this. Next 5, and through the bicone, and use that 5 times around. And here's my last set. Now I'm going to go through all of these again just to reinforce them. And if you're working with a thread that is thicker than 6 lb, so if you're working with an 8 lb, just skip this step because it's going to be too much thread and we're going to be going through the bicones especially a lot. Alright, and as you complete the circle, you want to be coming out of the middle of the 11-0s, so the third one. And now we're just going to add 3 in between the middle 11-0s from the previous row. So I'm going through this one here, adding 3 11-0s just like that. 3 over here, and so on. You don't have to pull it tight yet. Now, as you pull it together, you'll notice that this creates a nice little setting for the crystal. So before I finally pull this together, I take my Rivoli and I put it inside, making sure that it's facing the front with the Ginkgo beads. The back is going to be pretty as well, but well, not as pretty. Again, I'm going to go through all of these in the last row again, so the 3s and the middle one from the previous row. Now, this will actually already hold the crystal in place, but you can go one step further and just cover that back a little bit so that it's safe. So I went through to the middle one of the 3 that we just added, and I'm simply going to add a single 11-0 in between these middle ones. This is going to create a sort of a net that will further make a better sort of tension over here and hold our crystal in place. Now, depending on your 11-0s especially, but also the crystal that you put inside, because for example, Krakowski crystals are a little bit thicker than either Elite or Pretiosa Rivolis. So if you choose Krakowski, you might add, for example, 2 15-0s here instead, so that it holds the crystal more tightly without being too loose, if you know what I mean. because right now it's just enough. And I'm gonna go and add another 11-0 in between those, just to further close that up. And now I'm gonna connect these beads that I just added. So the 5 11-0s on the inner circle. As you can see, the last one is a little too much because it kind of pokes out. But when I connect them all together, it will all get a little bit smoother. And let me just show you. Here I chose Krakowski, Black Diamond. And what I did in here, it looks really nice, doesn't it? When I added the single 11-0 in between the middle of the threes, I only had to add a 15-0 in between them, and then it was closed. So there's a lot of variables, but in the end, you should get something like this. I'm just gonna go through these single 11-0s again. Alright, now let's get back to one of those bicones. So I'm just gonna step down the 11-0 in the previous row, go through the middle of the 3 in the previous row, and the middle of the 5. Just stepping down until I've reached the bicone. Alright, now what I'm gonna do now is go around the bicone and add a TOHO treasure, then 2 Magatama beads, and another TOHO treasure, and I'm gonna go around this bicone bead over here, attaching them just like that. Now I'm gonna pick up 5 TOHO treasure beads, and I'm gonna connect this bicone to the next one. Simple as that. And these treasure beads are basically going to fill in this space in here between the bicones on the back. Now I'm gonna do the same, so treasure, Magatama, treasure, and around the bicone. Now 5 of the TOHO treasure beads, and on to the other bicone. And you do the same thing all around your design. There's my last 5 of the TOHO treasures. Remember to pull tight every now and then. So I'm coming out of the bicone here. I'm gonna go up through the TOHO treasure that goes into the Magatamas, and I'm gonna go in between the Magatamas that I first added. Now we can turn our work to the front, and it already looks kind of cute. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a 3rd Magatama in between these 2, and I'm gonna go through the Magatama and ignore the TOHO treasure that's underneath, because what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick up an 11-0 and I'm gonna go into that 11-0 on one of the sides of the Magatama that was added at first in the middle of that Ginkgo bead to connect its 2 holes. So I'm adding an 11-0 sort of on top of the TOHO treasure that's connecting the 2 Magatamas with the bicone, so it's on top of that. And now I'm gonna go through the other 11-0 on the other side of the single Magatama, and I'm gonna add an 11-0 and go right through one of the pair of the Magatama beads over here. I'll add a 3rd one. Very easy, you just go around adding a 3rd Magatama bead. Alright, so this is going to be my final connection, because remember we don't have that first 3 connected to the previous single Magatama bead. By the way, if I'm pronouncing this wrong the entire time, please let me know and correct me. I never had this pronounced to me really, I just always read it. Anyway, there you go, you've just finished that star pendant design. And right now you're actually in the perfect place to add the dangly crystal right there. And you can do it by just getting a jump ring through the drop and through the Magatama bead I think a 6, 7, 8 millimeters will be fine. Just make sure it will go through the drop, but I'm going to do this with beads. So what I put on my thread are 4 15-0s, 1 11-0, 4 more 15-0s, and now I'll put on my drop. And I'll put on 4 more 15-0s and slide that through to the end of my thread. Your 15-0s will likely hide somewhere in the hole of the Magatama, but don't worry about it. We've accounted for that. Now I'm gonna pull this tight. As you see, I went through the 11-0 that I added. And now I'll add the missing 4 15-0s and go through the Magatama on the other side. Now just make sure that 15-0s on both sides hide in the hole so that everything is symmetrical. And I'm gonna go through everything once again just to make sure that it's all nice and sturdy. Now you can make this drop as long or as short as you like. You can add a bicone in there for a more shiny result. I'm just gonna leave it like this. And now is the time where we can finish and tie off our threads. So I'm just going to go over here through this 11-0 and I'll tie my knot by going under some threads here. And I'll weave the end in. Now that I know that I've had enough thread, I can finally trim it off and weave it in. So I'll just take off this stopper bead, go through some of the beads next to this one that I was exiting, and make another knot and weave the end in. Okay, so this could very well be a pendant on its own. You just put a jump ring through this Magatama bead here and hang it on a chain, or maybe add bail to the jump ring and then put it on a chain, and it will already look really nice. But we're going to be making it into a full-blown necklace with really, really pretty chains on the sides. And the way we're going to be doing this is we're going to start with one of the chains, and we're going to start at the end here. We're going to go all the way to the middle here. We're going to attach it, and then we're going to get rid of the thread because we'll probably run out of it. And then after we do that, we tie a knot on the other side here. And then we start on the other half chain. And again, we start at the end and we go all the way down the center. We tie off our thread again, but we don't cut off the thread on this side because we will use this to add the bicones to the chain, because initially we won't be adding them. And we're going to use the tail thread over here to add the bicones all the way down through here and up the other half chain. So that's the procedure. And now let me show you how to do it. Alright, I've got my full wingspan of thread on my needle. We're going to start with a single 6mm pearl, and we're going to go through it, slide it down our thread. Now I'm going to add 3 11-0s and go back through that very same pearl. Now I'm going to add 3 11-0s on this side, and I'll go through the pearl again. Now I make sure that the beads arrange in two similar triangles on the two sides of the pearl. And now I'm gonna go through, I already went through one of the 3, and now I'm gonna go through the middle one. And this is actually where we'll make the loop where we're going to put our clasp. I'm going to put jump ring in there as I go by. You don't have to put anything in yet. You can put a jump ring later on. The way I do it is I pick up 4 11-0s just like that in my jump ring, and I make a circle, go around and through that 11-0 again, like this. That's why I say you don't have to put in a jump ring yet, because it may be quite annoying. As you can see, holding the tail thread with my other hand, just to make sure that it doesn't get loose. Now I'm gonna go through the 4 11-ohs in the loop again, as well as through that middle one that's in the initial 3. Now I'm gonna go over this loop again, but I'll add a 15-oh in between each of the 11-ohs. And this way the loop will be just a little bit nicer and prettier. And that's our loop. You want to be coming out of the 11-oh that's in the middle of the 3. And you'll go now down this 11-oh, the third one over here. And I'm gonna add 3 15-ohs, 1 11-oh, and 3 more 15-ohs. Just like that. And I'm gonna pass through the first of the 11-ohs on the bottom on the other side of the pearl here. So in this way we kind of encapsulate the pearl. We're gonna make a frame around the pearl, sort of. Now I'll go down the other 11-oh in here. Now I'm not going through the middle 11-oh, just through this third one. So the 2 are connected, just like this. And I'm adding the same sequence, so 3 15-ohs, 1 11-oh, 3 15-ohs on the other side. And again, I'm going through the first of the 3 11-ohs on the other side. And down through the third one. So I'm not going through the middle one again, because the 2 11-ohs have to be connected. This just looks prettier. I checked that. It looks nicer when they are connected like this. They make a neater triangle, if you know what I mean. So now as I'm coming out of this third 11-oh here, I'm gonna go through the pearl. Now what you want to do is you want to go through the lower one of these 2 beads on the other side of the pearl and up the middle one. Now we're going to be adding Ginkgo segment. So what I'll do now is I'll pick up a single TOHO treasure, a Ginkgo bead, and make sure that you pick it up from the narrower side. It doesn't matter which hole because they are symmetrical or flat on both sides. Just make sure that you're picking it up from the narrow side and not from the rounded side here. And I'm gonna pick up 2 more of treasure beads. So we have treasure, Ginkgo from the narrow side, 2 treasures, and I'm gonna make a circle around this middle of the 3 11-ohs next to the pearl. Just like that. Now I'm gonna go through that treasure that I added and through the Ginkgo. So through sort of half of the circle that just made, so that I'm coming out of this bottom hole, because this is gonna be ultimately the bottom of the chain. Here's where the Magatamas are gonna be. So this is gonna be the bottom of the chain, this is gonna be the upper part of the chain, and this is where the bicone is going to be added later on. But right now, we're over here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to add a TOHO treasure, 2 Magatama beads, and TOHO treasure. And you might have guessed we're connecting the holes of the Ginkgo bead. Now I'm gonna add a 15-oh, then 4 TOHO treasures, and another 15-oh. And I'm just casually going through that first hole of the Ginkgo bead again. And I might as well go through the TOHO treasure and the Magatama bead on the bottom as well. This is what you get. The Ginkgo is kind of hugged by those beads from the top. Now it's the perfect time to add a third Magatama bead in between these. And I'm gonna go through this Magatama, through the TOHO treasure, and through the Ginkgo. Nothing else. And voila. This is how you get this cute little lacy a little bit pattern over at the bottom. Now I'm going to add basically the same thing as here, but on the other side here. So 1 TOHO treasure, 1 11-0, and 2 more treasures. And I'm going to make a circle around the Ginkgo bead. So I'm going through the Ginkgo bead, the hole that I'm coming out of, but from the other side. Now I'm going to go through the first treasure and the 11-0, just like this. So like not a half, almost a half of what we just added. This is what I have. Now I'm going to add, as you can see, similarly to what we did here, I'm going to add the third of the 3 11-0s that's going to be here, because this is going to be the middle one. Now it's going to be 1 11-0 on this side and 1 on the other side. But this one goes into the pearl, so I'm also picking up a pearl. And now pearl and 3 11-0s. So it's like an 11-0 pearl, 3 11-0s. I slide it down my thread, and I'm going right back through that pearl here, so that these 11-0s form this triangle. Now is where I can add the third of the triangle here, and I'll go again through that middle 11-0, and voila, we have 3. And now if you remember what we did in the beginning, I'm gonna go through this 1 bead here, this kind of third 11-0, and I'm gonna add my sequence on the sides, so 3 15-0s, 1 11-0, 3 15-0s, and I'll put it through this 11-0 here. And just like before, we're gonna omit the middle one, the middle 11-0, and we're going to go through the 11-0 on the other side. And now we can add the top sequence, and we pass through the 11-0 at the top. Now again, omitting the middle of the 3 and going through the one on the other side. And at this point you can go for a second time through this set of beads, but you can also go through the pearl. And now you want to specifically go through the lower, so the bottom 11-0 here, because you want to be going through the middle bead here upwards, so that you can add the Ginkgo bead the same way as you added it here. So 1 treasure, going through the Ginkgo, adding a new Ginkgo, 2 treasures, so treasure, Ginkgo, 2 treasures, and going up around the 11-0, just like that. And now I'm going to go down this treasure bead, down the Ginkgo, add the treasure, 2 Magatamas treasure, go up here, add the 15-0, 4 treasures, 15-0, go down, add the third, the middle of the Magatamas, go up through here, and then add this sequence, so a treasure, 11-0, 2 treasures, up, and again to add the pearl. And you do this for as long as you want this half chain to be. And we're gonna start with a pearl, and we're gonna end with a pearl. And in my chain, there's gonna be 9 of the pearls and 8 of the Ginkgos. So I'm just gonna continue, and I'll come back to you when it's time to connect this chain to the central element. Alright, and I'm done making this chain. As I said, I added 9 of the rounds of the pearls and 8 of the Ginkgos. And we're going to be connecting that with this thing over here. So I've ended at this stage and went through this middle of the 3 11-0s here as if I was just about to add a Ginkgo. But I'm not gonna do that. I'm just going to connect this 3 to the Magatama, the central Magatama in here. And I'm going to do that by adding 4 15-0s on each side. So I'm adding 4. And as I match these 2 elements together so that the Magatamas here face down, I can see that I'm coming out of this side. So I'm also coming into that Magatama bead here on the same side. Just like this. That last 15-0 will probably hide in that hole, which is okay. And I'll add 4 more on the other side. And just go back up through that 11-0 on the chain, just like this. I'm going to go through all of these beads in this circle twice more to ensure that they hold together nicely. And make sure you also go through the 15-0s that are kind of inside of the Magatama. Right, now I'll go down the sequence until I'm coming out of the Magatama, like this, so that I can finish my thread and go through some more of the beads to weave in the tail. And as I said, just a little bit of thread left, so I do recommend using a full wingspan of thread. So I'm just going to make a knot by going under some thread in between the Magatama beads. And I'll weave in the tail. Now I already trimmed the end over here. So this was connected to the spool, and now I can weave this end in as well. It's not going to be needed anymore, so you may remember it is coming out of the round bead or the check barrel. So I'm just going to go maybe into one of those beads, tie a knot, and weave in the tail. Alright, now it's just time to do the very same thing and in the end flip it. So I already did mine. I already made the other chain for the other side. Here it is. It's the exact same one, only now I'm going to flip it. And I did not cut off the thread this time because we're going to be coming back along the entire chain with the thread. So I just flipped it to the other side so that the Magatama lace, sort of, is facing down again. And I'm going to attach it in the very same way over on this side. And again, I'm gonna tie a knot and weave in the tail here. And then I'll come back to tell you how to add the final touch, which are the bicones that we're going to be adding in the spaces over here. And that's done. Now, could you leave it just like this? Of course you could, but I wouldn't be myself if I didn't add some more bling. So this is why I'm going to add some bicones over here. So I'll come back to the start of the second chain where I still have the thread connected to the spool. And I actually took like twice the length of the chain plus some more, and this is what you're gonna need because there's not gonna be any circles. We're just gonna go along and add the bicones. So I'm coming out of the round bead in here, but what I want to be coming out of are the 15-0s on top here. So what I'll do is I'll actually go through one of the 11-0s, whichever one, down here, back through the other one. And I'm gonna go through the 6mm pearl. Now up through one of the 11-0s on the other side, and now you have to go through the one that's like on the opposite side to the side where you're going to be adding the bicones, so from the side facing down. So this is the 11-0 that I'm going through, and I'm gonna go down the other one on the side that we're going to be adding bicones on, so from the top. And now easy peasy, I just go through the 15-0s and the 11-0 and 2 more 15-0s, so I'm not gonna go through that last 15-0 here actually. Now for these bicones and seed beads that I'm using, I'm going to pick up the Elite bicone because this is what we're using. These are the Elite Eureka Crystal bicones. And I'm gonna pick up a 15-0 because the Elites are kind of, I would say, wide, while the TOHOs are kind of wide as well. So they would just take up too much space. And if you choose different colors of beads, don't worry if this gets arched the wrong way instead of this. Just use a smaller bead next to the bicone and you'll be fine. So as you can see, I just went through the TOHO treasures on the side of the Ginkgo. And now I'll be adding the 15-0 and going down the treasures on the other side. There's also a 15-0 down here, but you don't go through it, you leave it alone. And now I'm going to start with a 15-0 and then add the bicone. Now up to 15-0s, 1 11-0 to 15-0s on this side of the pearl. Now a bicone and the 15-0 up the two TOHO treasures on the side of the Ginkgo. Now a 15-0 on top, and so on and so forth. This is pretty straightforward. Right now we're just connecting this, and this isn't supposed to have too much tension. You can pull tight every now and then, but it's just going to get a little bit loose anyway. This just helps this entire structure first get more bling, but also don't turn over. This is not like a big turnover material, so it won't turn to its back, but this will add some extra stability, and this will be facing the same way at all times. So let me just do all of that all the way to the middle, and then we're going to be connecting these two chains and continuing up the other side. And I'm done with this side. The chain is looking really pretty with the bicones. I really love the 2x shine on them. Now we've reached the middle. So what I'm gonna do here, you can also do some experimentation with the size of the beads, because some of them will turn out like too big, some of them will turn out too small, and we want like a smooth arch, just like in here. So I'm gonna go ahead and try 15-0, 11-0, then a bicone, then two 15-0s, and this is gonna be like half the sequence here, and 11-0 now. Okay, and now after I add this 11-0 in the middle here, that's going to be like the bead that I'm gonna go through several times. I'm going to add 15-0, 11-0, 15-0, and I'll go through the Magatama bead from the other side than the side that I'm coming from, and another sequence of 15-0, 11-0, 15-0, and I'm gonna go through that middle 11-0 on top over here, so that I end up with a loop. And at this point you can take a look if the length of your sequence with the bicone will be right for your necklace. In my case, it seems just fine. If you're making a shorter necklace, the sides might go a little bit more like this. So you might need another 15-0 maybe in here, or an 11-0 maybe, but mine is going to be more like this. So it seems like that central 11-0 is in the right spot. So I'm just gonna go through this loop here in the middle again. So that I'm coming out of the 11-0 on top in here. And I'll add another sequence of two 15-0s, bicone 11-0, 15-0. And I'm gonna go through this outline of the pearl on this side. So two of these 15-0s and the middle 11-0. And down the next two 15-0s. And that's what it looks like. I think it's really nice. So I can continue adding the bicones along the other side of the chain. And that's done. I already tied a knot and trimmed off the excess thread. And the only thing that's left to do is add the clasp. And I've decided I'm going to use this toggle clasp that has an extra loop that we can add a pendant on. Now, for this one, I'm gonna mind where the front of my work is, and I want the drop after I attach it, I want it to hang down so nicely on the back. This is gonna be so pretty. So I want to attach the heart on this side. I just need my pliers. Actually, for this one, I could use another jump ring because, as you can see, these rings are both facing the same way. So I'm just gonna add one more jump ring. I'm gonna close up this one. So I'm going to use a smaller ring so that it looks nicer. Close it up. Right now, nothing's going to twist. It's just gonna lay beautifully on the back of the neck. Now the bar of the clasp, I can see here that this is not entirely close, so I'll just close it up because these jump rings, as you can see, their ends don't meet like exactly. They're not facing each other, the ends of this jump ring. So I'm just gonna open that up, add on the bar, and close it up. Right, and that's our toggle clasp. And now we want to add a little extra something. So I'll grab a 5 or 6 millimeter jump ring and I'll put my drop on it. Simple as that. And I'll hang it on over here. And in this way, after you close that clasp, you have a little extra shiny shimmery thing hanging down. Alright guys, that's it for this bridal tutorial. If you make this in white or in any other colors, don't forget to share in our Facebook group, The Beader's Nook at Eureka Crystal Beads. I'll put the link down below in the description. All of the materials that you've seen here today can be found at eurekacrystalbeads.com, as well as other colors as well. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one. Bye!